Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 23 of the Tech Informist, recording on January 23rd, 2015. We are pleased to be joined by Richard Hay, who is well known throughout the Microsoft circles as the main contributor to WindowsObserver.com and now one of the newest contributors over at WinSupersite.com and also the co-host, or actually the solo host, of the Observe Tech podcast. Richard, welcome.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Yes, and I'm also joined by good friend and co-host JJ Hammond, who is also the co-host of the STL Tech Talk podcast and co-host of Codecast by STL Tech Talk. If you're into software development, make sure to check out that podcast. JJ, how are you doing this afternoon?
I am beaming, sir.
Yes, yes. As are many Microsoft users and fans this week, which is why we're all here today. We're going to be talking a lot about Windows 10. There was a lot of news that came out Wednesday from the Microsoft event, and we're going to be covering everything top to bottom, ins and outs, and then we're also going to get to know Richard a little bit more and help inform you a little bit more about Richard. So, and why you want to make sure that you're following him or being involved if you're not already doing so.
Honestly, the goal is to convert you to the Hayes religion. Let's just say that's what we're trying to do here. No, just kidding, folks. No, we're very excited about to have you on, Richard. So thank you so much again for being on. I didn't tell you before the show I was going to thank you profusely throughout the show, but there it is. Thank you again for being on, sir. It's an honor to have you on. And in a serendipitous way, we were talking about how you're a new contributor to WinSupersite after following it for 20 years. So that's amazing stuff. That's really cool. That's what it's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate, again, I thank you a lot for being here. It's been a very solid week in the Microsoft world. I mean, we knew they were going to come out with the new consumer stuff, but then they threw the Surface Hub and HoloLens at us and kind of got us all going, oh, wow. And I think that really fired people up. I mean, to watch the reactions on Twitter as these tech journalists come out of an hour of using a prototype. If you read the details, it wasn't that cool little visor that they showed on stage. It was
wires and battery packs.
Had to have around their neck. And and they came out of there going, wow. I mean, folks like Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley, all those folks we know in the Microsoft ecosystem, Lance Ulanoff from Mashable, and they were blown away by that technology. So it's going to be interesting. That was a neat wow factor to wrap up that day, I think.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then Bill Gates' tour of drinking poo water is in full force. No, I think honestly, this is we talked on Wednesday, so I'm going to do a quick recap for those who listen to our Wednesday's show. When we were talking about how important Wednesday was. And the presentation was, we were talking about how Microsoft needed to come out and establish themselves and then what they were going to do to establish Windows and why the story of Windows and what it should be going forward and why people should develop for the platform and what the Windows story was going to be going forward. All of us were floored with HoloLens, but we were also extremely happy to see, I think, for the most part, at least from my perspective, a lot of my questions were answered, and I was very happy with and what Satya Nadella said, which was on Windows you'll get the best experience, and Windows is where you're going to find our services on other platforms, sure, but here on Windows we have a very compelling case for you developers and you consumers and you programmers and the people in the IT fields and business enterprise. This is why you choose Windows. We want you to love us instead of feel like that you're forced to use us and then you get to go home and play with your iPad or iPhone. Like, we want you to be able to do everything here, and I think that is a very compelling case. I am very biased and I don't care. But I think that it's a phenomenal case to be made, and I think they did that clearly. But I should mention, they literally showed us everything at one of the very beginning slides in the background. The kid's wearing a HoloLens, and the Surface Hub is right in front of Terry Myerson as he walks out.
Oh, right. You're talking about when he kind of showed those motion studies, they called them, or something
the
like
motion
that.
studies. They were there. Everything was there, and everybody was still like, I don't get it.
And the Surface Hub hanging right on the wall being used.
That was gorgeous. It was in plain sight. You know, that was like some Jedi mind trick, like ninja, like holy moly.
Did you notice how they looked funny in front of that screen, though? It looked
did.
like they had an outline, and I think that was specifically because of that type of screen that it is, because you can interact with it, write on it, and all that stuff. But they looked weird in front of that, as if it was a photoshopped picture instead of...
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you go to Universal Studios and they show like holograms. I can't believe I'm actually saying it like this, but now that I'm putting these together, this isn't a conspiracy show, okay? But they show holograms of like of people talking in front of things, and that's kind of what they look like in front of the Surface Hub. They actually look kind of weird, like Richard, you just said. They kind of look like holograms when they show.
It didn't dawn on me during the show that was anything untoward.
Right.
You know? And then as soon as they turned around and said this, I was like, that's why they looked weird in front of that.
Yeah, because that's not a normal. That's not a normal screen. Right. Exactly. So, let me address some of the questions that I had before. Music handling continuum, video native access, browser security, extensions on the browser. What does that look like? What does Spartan look like? Mobile devices, gaming news, Xbox branding, new devices, Office, the touch version, and application, the application gap, basically between the Windows ecosystem and like Android and iOS and Apple. So almost all of those things were addressed. So Kevin, before I start getting into my thing, you go first. What was to you? What was a question that you wanted answered, and why?
The things that I wanted to see Windows 10 on Windows Mobile, the Windows Phone experience, and how they were going to translate that, how this idea of one code across all these different devices, different sizes, showing off basically, what it's going to look like on a Dell Venue Pro 8, what it's going to look like on a Surface, what it's going to look like on Lumia 1520, which thank you, Joe Belfiore, for showing that off on a 1520.
He demoed that, yep.
His little bit hands.
And then getting to see what it's going to look like on a regular desktop, laptop, and then also how it's going to integrate with Xbox One. And when Phil Spencer was showing that, they were demoing with, I can't remember what her name was, but she was playing on Xbox One, he was playing on PC, playing the new upcoming Fable game that'll come out later this year, and being able to play together across the different platforms, but in the same game, I was like, that pretty much cinched what will be my first next-gen console purchase. Will likely be an Xbox One.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the other part of that was the streaming from the Xbox One to the PC.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the fact that you could start up a game from your Xbox One on your home network and play it on another device. Now, we didn't hear much about, and Wednesday was not a day for specs, so we don't know, will that run on a Surface 2 or will it run on a Surface Pro 3, what that kind of stuff. But again, the concept, remote control, shutting it down, all that kind of stuff. So those two demos on the Xbox side, plus the app. The app is going to be universal across all the platforms. In fact, I think I read somebody on Twitter with the build that released today, 9926, that app is in there. In fact, Major Nelson has done a video that they've put on the Xbox YouTube channel that walks you through the app and what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
So that is going to be an interesting story, and I think could possibly, from listening to the last Windows Weekly show, was this idea of being able to bridge the gap between old Xbox 360 games that could possibly be played this way as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't remember hearing anything specific, and they said they're never going to emulate 360 stuff on the One, so could that still happen? Sure, but I got an Xbox 360 sitting here, by the way, if you want to buy it.
Contact Richard
Hay. We should put the little,
they're going for peanuts now. People are selling them on. They're not getting more than $150 for them on eBay.
Right.
But that plays right into your wheelhouse, though. To be honest, I mean, I don't mind playing those kinds of games because you can get them for cheap now.
Oh
right?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'm very excited to talk to Richard about himself later. But this is. Unfortunately and fortunately, you're coming in at a time where we usually talk more about you as the guest than we do the tech news, but holy cow, we were just flooded with all sorts of stuff this week. So one of the things I want to talk about is mobility, right? This idea of the continuum experience. So I have a list of 13 things that I'll run throughout the next few minutes, and one of the first thing on the list that Microsoft talked about was the mobility experience of Continuum. Okay, that's what it's called when you move from, say, a two-in-one, or when you go from, say, a tablet and there is a connected maybe Bluetooth keyboard of something of that nature. What we know is that the start screen isn't finalized, but what we saw in the screenshots and what we saw from the presentation is it's not going to have the same panorama type of scrolling. We're going to get a more combination of a Windows 7, Windows 8 type of live tile integration when moving from, say, a tablet to a PC. So, for example, if you have a keyboard and mouse plugged into a Surface Pro 3, for example, and then you detach that keyboard and mouse, then the OS will prompt and ask you if you want to switch to tablet view. And it's the bottom right-hand corner of the screen as it sits right now. And then you're able to transition into the tablet experience. That's what I would call it, the tablet experience. Now, these are on devices 8 inches or above screen size. So that was really interesting to see. But then you move to that, and it moves into a more touch-friendly, touch-oriented, what we're used to seeing on the current Windows 8.1 devices when you click on the Windows icon right now if you're in the desktop mode. So that was an interesting transition. And then the move from that to the phone, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Richard, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something Microsoft said. I believe Terry Myerson said even from the very beginning was, "You are not our products." Right? Our services are our products, and who are you going to trust, basically? So trust equals privacy here, and that was kind of driven home. And something that I've thought for a long time, I've been a long time Windows supporter, is that if I was going to trust somebody with my data, I mean, who am I going to trust, right? So my thought was, the first thing that came to mind was trusting a Microsoft over a Google. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there was a little bit of a poke there because of all the stuff Google's done to them recently with releasing those vulnerabilities.
Right.
But I think there's they're doing it. We're seeing from Microsoft, especially if you pay attention to Brad Smith, their corporate lawyer, and the efforts they're making to protect data on their servers. The case in Ireland. The fact that the incident that happened in Paris, they were able to respond very quickly to requests for data related to that investigation by the FBI. So to me, they very publicly tell me that they're protecting my information, that they're protecting my right for my information to be private, and that just because they have access to the servers does not mean they're going to just freely give up the information. In fact, they're in contempt of court with this whole Ireland thing because they're not going to do that. So Microsoft very publicly shows me that I can trust them in that way. When it comes to Google, it's a little bit different. I don't see that same kind of demonstrative display from them that they are protecting my data in the same way. So, and like you, I'm kind of already in the Microsoft ecosystem, so it's, for me, that's developed over the years as well because I've had no reason not to trust them. They've not given me a reason not to. And I think they will continue to do that, especially with, again, I take all these legal precedents that they're looking at and working on and protecting our data, and they're fighting for it. Most corporates would just flip the switch and say, oh, well. And I forget what the exact line was that Terry Myerson said, but it was something to the effect of, you're not our product, you're our customer.
Exactly.
And something to that effect, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that was really interesting and good, right? Because what you want to do, again, we're going to talk about throughout this show how Microsoft established themselves right now in the current context of all the different ecosystems, the way the future looks, and what they're doing going forward, and who they define themselves as. And they define themselves as a corporation that will go to bat for you, like you just said, with your privacy, and be able to deliver you the services, and that be what they focus on, not detail oriented to you. So and allowing you to control what the Cortana, the digital voice assistant, has access to. Even they even go down to that level. I mean, I know big fans of Google and all that kind of stuff. They can't say the same about Google now.
That's right.
It doesn't give you those things, not up front. I mean, you can drill down into some of the settings, but they're not all there readily available because the customer you are their product instead of the other way around, because
Yeah.
Google's essentially free for everything. So that was the other thing on my list. And the next thing was Microsoft put a big emphasis on natural interaction. Did you guys notice that? They talked a lot about voice, a lot about control in the air, so like a Kinect style, and then the HoloLens. We'll talk about that in a little bit with the gazing, right? The different ways in which we can interact with our computing needs, and that was so futuristic, and I was so inspired, man, after watching that presentation. That Build sold out in less, what was it, an hour
45
today?
minutes.
Yeah,
It's about
yesterday.
40 so minutes.
So that should tell you, because the year before that, 24 hours it took to sell out. So I believe that is a precursor that they're looking forward to the next one. So natural interactions. Were you guys impressed with Cortana is now on the PC, the phone, and what we're going to see from HoloLens?
I think we'll also see her whenever Xbox One goes over to.
Oh, that's right, Xbox.
When Xbox One goes to Windows 10, there's no doubt she's going to be there too, because if she's on the platform and Windows 10 is a core platform, we already can interact with our Xbox One by voice. We call it Xbox,
Right.
but but they demoed with the Xbox app on the PC doing a game DVR.
Right.
It manually had to be started. But I see the voice command coming. At some point, Cortana record that or something to that effect.
Right.
So, and natural, interacting with. Think about Cortana on the phone, and even though I forget to use it a lot, it's very handy when you do think about using it. I wear a Microsoft band. I can talk to my band and set a reminder or something like that. So.
Yep.
I think they're going in the right direction with that, and the HoloLens really showed the future of that, really projecting that out, 10, maybe 15 years from now, but,
Looks
No!
like he somehow lost his connection there.
I could cry because he was on a roll, dude. He was
Yes.
on a roll. Okay, well,
Real quick, though, my thoughts on Cortana.
yeah, I was gonna literally just get ready to ask you that question.
I love the idea and all the additional interaction of Cortana, the way that they've integrated it to do so much more, and how the voice recognition, it picks up if you're speaking about a contact. For example, the Terry Myerson, capitalize the punctuation and everything that Joe Belfiore was doing during that demonstration.
Right.
And
how Cortana now is going to be able to search not only things on the internet, but search for your files, search for things in OneDrive, and really looking forward to this implementation.
I've been reading guys who are using Cortana today. They said there's some rough edges around the 9926 build, but people are, and in fact I think NeoWin, Brad Sams wrote a post about Hey Cortana, how to implement Hey Cortana on the desktop with this new
That's
build.
gorgeous. And so people who listen to this show are into technology, but we can see that the more consumer-facing type of technologies that aren't necessarily gimmicky, maybe in a gimmicky category to people who just want to be ironic about everything, and I hate that, and it drives me nuts. I just wanted to let people know that, so stop being ironic. And those jeans are way too tight. The other thing is this is a product that I could see actual other human beings aside from us using, which is good, right? Because then that means that more people are going to be contributing to what we enjoy, and I can't overstate that enough. I mean, I really I saw the underpinnings of that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that more in the developer part of it. So Kevin weighed in on the Hey Cortana and the Cortana features. So you say Cortana, bring up my PowerPoint presentation on our next pitch to advertisers for the Tech Informist, and it's going to bring up those. She's going to bring up that from my OneDrive, for example, or if it's on a server or whatever. We can see that as being a great way to search, and I think that that's a real-life good example of how it and make people more productive, right? Because that's their cadence, man. That's what they're going on, and I believe that, and I can see it now. Because it's one thing to just talk about it and say, hey, we're productive, and then just kind of say whatever about it. But it's another thing to show, no, we're serious. This is how you're going to be more productive. So that was really cool. We hub now. It's not in my particular notes, but Richard, you probably know more, a little bit more in depth about this. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, I've watched the video and stuff like that and watched the presentation like everybody did on Wednesday, but again, it's a piece of technology that's meant to enhance the interactions of people, not to obscure you from people. The reality of our world today is companies finding it very challenging to get people sent to conferences and spend the money on that kind of stuff. It's much less expensive for them to buy a device like this and buy it for each of their locations and then use it as their connection, to connect with, because it's got built-in Skype, so it's got whiteboarding, so you can share that whiteboard back and forth, audio, obviously visual, but that investment will pay off in the long because it brings everybody together, and the way they demoed it kind of showed that. Right. But again, the technology is supposed to enhance, not get in the way. And you were talking earlier about all the new interfaces. The word natural really strikes me. Eventually at some point, we're not going to have to say, "Hey, Cortana." We're going to just be able to speak. And again, I know I'm talking very Star Trek-ish here, but that's the kind of where we're headed.
Right. All right, I'm a Star Trek geek.
Even in Star Trek, they said computer. They addressed it computer, and then it would give it a little acknowledgement, and they tell it what to do. So, I mean, it's kind of bizarre to think we're at this stage. I mean, everybody's been focusing on 2015 as being the destination of Marty McFly in Back to the Future. Right. And we're in 2015. In 1985, that was 30 years away. Right. I'd been in the Navy 3 years at that point. No way thinking about 2015. No. And now we've arrived, and in fact, a lot of people had fun with the fact that the HoloLenses are here, and there was a picture of Marty McFly sitting at his table. It wasn't from the first Back to the Future. I think it was the second.
The second one.
Yep. Sitting at his table using the HoloLenses that he had. So I think it's great. I love, and technology it's got to enhance. It can't get in the way. Because when it starts to get in the way, it's about the technology.
Yeah, and Richard, just real quick, speaking about the HoloLens, I know we haven't really moved into it. Joel Jackson is in the chat room, so if anybody that is watching live, also know that we have a chat room at TechInformist, thetecinformist.com/live. So every episode we do a live chat room and all that stuff so people can watch and chat along. Joel, a.k.a. Alaskan Jackson, asks, he's curious, Richard, if you think the new HoloLens will be a Microsoft Band-type product that is using it to demo efficiency and then sell licenses to OEMs versus building and selling it themselves.
Microsoft has always said they're going to continue to develop first-party hardware for the purposes of highlighting their services. Satya Nadella said it, I think, during the Surface Pro 3 launch. He said it during other times. And he said it. They want to highlight their services on first-party hardware, and then open up the platform, open up the APIs, open up the interfaces so that others can develop for it as well. Because they never developed Surface to compete with their OEMs. They can't. Right. But look at what we're seeing now from companies, though. Was it directly a cause of the Surfaces that came out and set a new standard? Maybe, because we're seeing a lot of creative stuff from OEMs now.
A lot of similar designs.
I think ultimately it may simply be built as a first-party device to kind of seed things. I mean, Band, for me, I hope they continue with Band. It's a great V1. It's a great first edition, but there are some things that can be fixed and changed and things like that. But there are challenges today. Battery life. Think about the stories that popped up yesterday about iWatch or Apple Watch. And, they're talking 2.5 hours battery life for a watch under heavy usage and maybe 20 hours glancing at it every once in a while. Batteries continue to be the biggest block to technology moving forward. Now, Elon Musk, a guy like him with Tesla and the battery stuff he's doing for Tesla, I think they're getting there. I think the technology will come, but even on Microsoft Band, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Band or not, but these side parts right here are where the battery is.
Right. Yes.
And so, let me hold it up. Yeah, the sides of the band here are where the battery is. That's where the two screws are. And so that's all the battery you have here to give you, and I get typically 2 days out of mine. Right. Depending on if I use the GPS or not for exercise or biking or something like that. But batteries are killing everything. So that to me is got to come along as fast as all this other cool tech does, because even that lens thing, the HoloLens that they could wear on their head, it's self-contained, but how long does that battery last?
Right.
You know.
Right.
But yeah, I think they will build it. I don't know that they're going to go into production to sell it full blown. I think they develop the technology, prove the technology, and then let others jump in there.
All right, so I propose this to you guys, and you guys can say yes or no. Let's just knock out HoloLens, and then we'll talk about everything else. How does that sound?
There you go.
Since we're already talking about it, we might as well. Are you game for that, Richard?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So HoloLens was. Let's talk a little bit about developers. So right now, HoloLens is going to come with its own store. So there's going to be a dedicated store for people who want to write to that. But more specifically, I want to tell everybody that Windows 10 natively comes with APIs that are going to be able to be used by HoloLens. HoloLens is the augmented reality device that's going to sit on your head with a visor that you can see through, so it's not going to be the same things that you're normally used to seeing with the virtual reality headset like Oculus Rift, where you have to have something that impedes your vision. There are tons of possibilities with this device. The reason why I say that is because it eliminates the fear of motion sickness. I particularly am subject to kind of motion sickness problems, and I know there are a lot of people who are. This takes a lot of that out of the work. Plus, we see the interface being very, very. I mean, even for a demo, they brought a woman out onto the stage, and she actually demoed this thing right then and there. So it wasn't a theoretical mock-up.
Nope,
people actually got to see this thing firsthand. So what I saw from the HoloLens was not only the advancement of technology and computing, what I saw was an inspiration for the next generation of people who program for these kinds of things and what people program for the future. And let me explain. Whenever a company comes out and says, unlike Apple, who says, hey, we designed a new chip that's the A6 or 7 or whatever, we had 6, hey, our coolest thing this year was the 64-bit processor. No. Microsoft came out and literally came out with a new processing unit called the HPU. For a geek who studies and loves the history of computing, they actually just created a new category of processors. That's gorgeous. I heard that. I heard that when they said that. Not enough people clapped, so whoever didn't, smack.
Well, they're pressed. They're not there to clap.
No,
well, they should.
They were there.
There were some.
Because I'm sure there were, and but my point with more people not being elated at this fact was probably that they were shocked and they had to literally write this out as they were watching it. So they're like, that's like sneezing and coughing and hiccuping at the same time. It's not possible. So what I want to just drive home right now for me is this is very mature and ready to go. And and they even Microsoft even stated that this thing is going to be ready for the release of Windows 10. Right. So we can see this being a huge part of everyday life going forward for entertainment, for instructions, for medical, for industry, industrial purposes on all sorts of levels, mechanical and otherwise. We can see this as a way for people with disabilities or handicaps, and all of the like. So we can see that. We can see the future of computing and what that's going to look like going forward, how to transform our world. So
hey, don't forget, this is going to go real in July with NASA and the Mars rovers. Mm-hmm. This is going to go into live practical applications in just a few months.
Right, so instead of this kind of pie in the sky, so instead of this idea of this is a good idea, they're moving on this.
It's working. Yeah,
it's working. And when I saw the guy during the commercial walk through, or the girl, whoever, walk through and change parts on
repairing the plumbing,
or repairing plumbing, the real life uses for people who aren't technological savvy are amazing, because they showed it to us right there. They're like, hey, if you're an engineer, check out, if you're an interior designer, how awesome would it be to design the whole room before you even moved anything in? You're like, oh, this is not going to work at all. Because the worst thing, time is money. And if you can save yourself time, you just saved yourself money. So
think about tech support. I work in tech support through a computer, with email. Think about the tech support applications as well.
Yeah,
huge.
unplug this here, and then you draw that, with your finger, and it has an arrow. So that's my piece on it. Richard, no, I'm sorry, Kevin, it's your turn. What do you think and about HoloLens, and did I miss anything and whatever?
No, you covered quite a bit, and just watching that demonstration and that in the video that they showed off, whenever they got to the Minecraft portion, and you touched the TNT boxes, and then it looked like a hole in the wall, blew up, and then you could see like another, the world like virtually through that opening.
Mm-hmm.
That was really neat to see. And Richard, you alluded to the whole the father helping his daughter,
Right.
from wherever in the world that they were, helping her. Okay, twist this to tighten up the piping with the plumbing. I was like that. Just being able to see some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The father and son.
Think about Detroit. Detroit
Right.
shows these. What do you call them? They have these. I can't. The word's escaping me, but they have these concept cars.
Right.
That they show off at these auto shows. But do you ever see that concept car?
Right.
But here they
the
showed us
concept car
something
usually never
more than
comes
the
out.
concept. It's reality.
Right. So, and that was cool, right? To see that engineers will be able to show, hey, here. Could you imagine like just a cardboard cutout, like a chair? All right, there's the chair. Go sit down while you're wearing this thing, and then we will show you all the different variations of the car that you want to buy. Right,
Yeah.
so we're seeing real life applications for this. That's what I think is going to be awesome moving forward. Here's the other thing that just crippled Google Glass is this idea of it's not something that you're going to go out along the street and record people and stuff like that. That's not how this is targeted. That's gorgeous.
Right.
The other thing that hamstrung Google Glass was it had to be tied to a cell phone. Guess what? You don't need to have that with HoloLens. That's amazing. I mean, that's just that was a feat of engineering in itself. The other thing is real life applications for 3D printing. So we can see a company taking out the time and developing their own toolkit, like the toolbox that they showed off during the demo, and saying, here's your toolbox. Here are the things that you can make with this toolbox. Go ahead and start making it and then print this thing, and then we can ship it out the door. Specialty. It can be specialty done, and it can be done from the United States or from local places. So that gives local economies. We talked about that during our last show. A leg up. We talked about it was a Popular Science article that we talked about, and 3D printing and being quick to market with some of the stuff. So this is going to be amazing. This is going to have far-reaching stuff going into the future. The other thing, again, I can't state enough is it doesn't have that weird, unbalancing issue. Almost everybody that I've seen try it out on their Twitter feeds or social media, they were all like, you know what, we're good. We tried Oculus, we about hurled because we were flying through space or whatever, but not here. So I just wanted to just say how excited I am about this coming forward. And I mean, if you're a fan of the Windows Microsoft Store, like if you've been into one of those, I mean, they are really neat to go into. Just think about how cool they're going to be to go into and put on one of these headsets, right? Right. The HoloLens, it's going to be so cool, man. If you're fortunate to live next to a store, so that's going to be really, really exciting, and some of the demos that are going to be done there. So, Richard, I'm going to go ahead and throw it to you now. Is there anything that Kevin or I missed when talking about the HoloLens, so that we can move on from that and move on to other things that might be a little bit more an immediate concerns for people's daily lives?
No, the HoloLens is really a very unique thing. And I'll be honest with you, when they first kind of brought this out on stage and started that on Wednesday, I actually tweeted, is this a joke? Because it felt like one of those things. It felt like they're just messing with this at the end of the presentation. And as it continued to went on, and you guys, the guy who came on stage, you know who he is, right? He's the guy who developed the software for Kinect.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So a very forward-looking, visionary type guy. And I honestly, it was a joke, and it just seemed so surreal. And then as things continued, it was like, oh, this is, yeah, they're serious here. And so it was good to see. Again, it's weird that it's been in the basement, Building 92, below the Welcome Center and the Microsoft, the little employee store they have.
Right.
And it's been 5 years that they've been working on it. So again, it's another example. We saw this with Surface. Microsoft's getting pretty good at keeping secrets and not letting that stuff leak out. But yet in other segments, such as Windows 10, haven't had issues with these builds leaking, making jokes about it actually in blog posts on the Windows blog that, oh yeah, those two builds snuck out, you know. Whereas before that used to, I was part of the Vista beta, which when it was still a private beta, and I was in the reset group. So they had done the first half, scrapped it, and started over. And my gosh, if you ever thought about breaking NDA in those days, you're done. You know, you're on it kind of thing. And so it's been interesting to see the transition, this transformation of Microsoft with this what they're doing in secret and private and keeping it that way and revealing it when they're ready, and then this openness that's coming as well. So it's quite amazing. I mean, it really is. And you know, I said this to you guys before the show, but I was on campus last November for the Microsoft MVE Summit. The vibe on campus was different in 4 other times I'd been there. The employees are enthused. They're fired up about what they're doing, and you can see that. You can see that in the way they're reacting. You can see it in their enthusiasm on Twitter as things like Wednesday happen. So it's great. I think it's terrific to see happen for a company that I'm a fan of.
Yeah, absolutely, wholeheartedly. So, unless we get any more questions from social media and all that stuff, I'd like to move on to things that are going to be more immediate in people's lives. So let's talk a little bit about music, TV, and entertainment. All looks to still have the Xbox branding on it. For using the Xbox Live and OneDrive syncing to create a library of a person's content and allow for storing of files locally. We still have yet to see how they're going to handle the OneDrive. We're showing you what's in your OneDrive, but it's not necessarily synced to your desktop. We haven't quite got an answer on that wholeheartedly yet. Like, no, we're not doing that anymore, or we're kind of sort of doing that. So that's kind of up in the air. So for many of you who know what I'm talking about, then you'll know that you're like, oh, great. I still don't have a concrete answer on this. But let me talk about music specifically. So I saw Joe Belfiore go ahead and demo what it looked like to create a playlist right out of your own music that you have synced to OneDrive. Because Microsoft people, for the most part, we love being crazy with our own content, right? Like we make an MP3 version, or we have a WAV version, or we have an MHKD format, or some blah 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 blah. It's like we're ridiculous, and we want it all. Like we don't want to, stream that stuff. We want to have the physical version of it somewhere, right? Like I downloaded this song, I want to be able to have it all the time. So we saw the ability of music to be dragged around, and we saw what that looked like on both the phone and the PC. So like a phone and a PC. And then now let's talk about the universal app. So in talking about this, Joe Belfiore was showing off how universal apps are now, thank God, going to take place of the modern Metro UI design. We can stop saying modern and Metro, I think, at this point. We can just say universal apps. And to be honest, that's a way better name because no one knew what to say. It was like Windows Phone, modern Metro style app. That's just way too many words. Way too many words. So we got to see how universal apps and that model is going to be the core experience of Windows moving forward. And I should note that what Satya Nadella said was, developers, let us help you find your next billion customers. And the way that they're going to do this is say that Windows and Windows 10 is not going to be limited to just like an iPhone, to just the phone, quote unquote, or the tablet, and then OS 10 like limited to just the laptop. We're saying that with one code base, you're going to be able to share your code and APIs to where you can target so many more devices than you ever have before, and try to do it in a more secure manner with arguably the best IDE in the whole world, which is Visual Studio. And there's a free version. So that was a great introduction, and then I will go into the next part, which means that the universal app model is what they're using for the Photos Hub, which is very important because the Photos on Windows 8.1 is just stupid. I see most people who use Windows 8.1, and they're like, yeah, there's this Photos thing, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use like the Windows Media Viewer or whatever from back. Yeah, from back when Vista was a thing, And I'm like, Come on, guys, you haven't made this better by now. So we saw the Photos app translate, up on the screen. On the left hand side they had the phone, on the right hand side they had the PC, and we saw what a universal app is going to look like, both in a light theme and a dark theme. And then we were also able to see how the photos were auto enhanced. So a little bit of copy from other competitors, but hey, rock on. That's better. And the universal app model speak through all of Microsoft's products. So you got Word, PowerPoint, Excel. You've got all the different those. You got photo, and then more importantly, the email application. One thing that drove people nuts in Windows 8.1 was the transition from desktop to the Metro style UI and how you're flipping back and forth, and then the difference in people who were moving from an older Outlook version to the new mail application. There was just too much of a jarring experience. So now we see a one universal Outlook mail app that resembles a lot from iOS. It takes a lot of the same gestures and things like that. Swiping left flags an email. Swiping right deletes it. So we can see some of those gestures move forward, but we can see that in a coherent way. And then Calendar. Many of you have complained about Calendar using it on the Windows 8.1 and the Windows Phone 8.1. They just recently updated the Windows Phone 8.1, which was terrible until they updated it. But now it's so much better. Now we can see what the future of these universal app models is going forward. So I'll toss it to whichever one wants to address universal apps first.
Windows 10, the universal apps, like you mentioned, is really nice, and again, that goes back to my whole just being so happy to see a universal set of code across everything. So you're going to be a familiar experience because people on Windows Phone, you get used to that, and then you come over to Windows 8, 8.1, and it's a kind of a completely different experience. And I just want to touch on Office real quick with the whole the way that they're moving forward with that, especially on the Windows Phone side, being able to integrate the ribbon there towards the bottom in a way, and you actually feel like you're getting a full-fledged version of Word, Excel, PowerPoint to actually be used on your Windows Phone devices. That to me I was very, very pleased to see that.
Yeah, and you got to bring it back to the developers, even though Satya Nadella does not jump up on stage and say developers, developers, developers. The consistent message though to devs is like what you said, JJ. We've got the tools already, and I think they said that most apps that are written now already for 8.1 will do just fine in Windows 10. There may be some that have to have some changes. But the universal code base, and a great example, I mean, they showed us demos side-by-side phone and desktop, but somebody who gives a live example of that right now, and I think you guys have had him on your show as well, is Brandon Paddock and Tweedium.
Yes.
And that development for what he does for desktop and Windows, the experience is not the exact same. The interface is a little bit different depending on the device.
Yeah.
But if I run it on one, I pretty much understand how to use it on the other because it's a similar type of experience. And that's where they're going with this. One code base. So we saw Brandon, he was working on the Windows Phone one. You would see changes there, and then you'd start to see him in the desktop. It was very quick for him to transition those changes and features and enhancements between the platforms. And that's what they're trying to, and I think that's a piece of why Build sold out in 45 minutes. I think people have been ignoring this. They've been talking universal apps for a while, but nobody really kind of grabbed onto it, and I think Build is really going to push the envelope for universal apps because of the fact it can target any platform. Because didn't he mention on Wednesday as well and confirm, or it may have been before, that Windows Store apps will run on Xbox, run on Windows 10? So as these platforms start to run the core base, you're going to be able to develop one app, maybe make slight adjustments for it, maybe within the same code to adapt to whatever device it's displayed on. But because it's the same OS and the same, it's going to be so easy for developers. And I think that's what they really want to sell. I think Build will be all about that.
Couldn't agree more, Kevin.
I completely agree too, because you've got to like I try to tell people that are kind of into development and stuff. I'm like, if you want to make a name for yourself in software development, you need to develop for Microsoft and Windows Phone especially, because the Windows Phone community treats people like Rudy Wynn as, they're like
Rock stars.
yeah, and they're very well known and very well liked, and they're making things happen. And when somebody has a great experience on a device, you really follow along with that developer and what it is that they do. So there's a very large untapped market for developers in the Microsoft ecosystem, especially now.
Yeah, and Microsoft will do a whole lot to help you. I mean, try going to a competing platform and say, hey, I need some help with something. They're going to go, you don't know how to do that. You suck at life anyways. Why would I help you? No, there's a community here, man, and that's really cool, and that's what people speak to, and I think that's gorgeous moving forward. The last thing I'll say is we don't. So here's some things that we don't know yet. How much is going to be the HoloLens? What does Windows cost for enterprise? The enterprise after the first year. What does a new
you said after the first year, enterprises don't get it for free in the first year.
Right.
There are different licensing schemes. Just to be clear, okay.
Yeah. So you're right. I was reading from something and I skipped over that. But so for the first year, consumers, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, but the first year for consumers, it's free. So if you're running Windows 7 or Windows or higher, you can go ahead and transition on into Windows 10, and then you won't have to pay for subsequent updates for the life of that device. And that makes sense because we can kind of get into that later, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds. But
that's actually kind of how Windows works now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So then, how much is it going to be for the enterprise? So that's going to be interesting. Where are the new flagship phones running Windows 10s? Like, what is the timing of those? Or is that going to be literally the same time that Windows 10 comes out, or what that looks like? And then, how are updates for the current devices that are out there? What does the path of upgrade look like as far as the upgrade to the OS from Windows Phone 8.1 or even Windows Phone 8? Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. And then what happens? We've heard some information on RT, but we haven't heard anything like definitive yet. Richard, maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong.
I read what most everybody has read, that they didn't say anything specific during the presentations. In the Q&A afterwards, they indicated there would be an update for the RT devices. And what I said on my show yesterday was that I suspect that the Windows 10 update for Surface and Surface RT is going to be kind of like the update that we got on Windows Phone 7 when 8 came out. Remember, we got Windows Phone 7.8, and so you got some of the interface updates and features like that. But that was about it. I think the same.
Right.
We're going to get the same thing on this RT side. I continue to read some people who seem to think there's a life for RT, but I don't know. I mean, when you can get an 8-inch tablet on an x86. Why do you need an RT device? Now, I think, unfortunately, the market didn't take off for RT. RT is a great device from the perspective of security. It's almost impenetrable to viruses and malware and stuff like that.
Right.
The store is well curated, so people can't just get stuff in there like they do on Android or Google Play and things of that nature. I'm not saying it's impenetrable, but people simply aren't targeting it. It's kind of like Apple. They weren't targeted for many years because of numbers, and RT numbers are low. But, when I worked at Best Buy for 6 months selling computers, and I introduced people to Surface RT, and I talked to them about that fact alone, and again, I've really learned this lesson in the last 4 months doing tech support for a software company that is focused on cleaning malware and stuff off of computers. People want that. They are so fed up with the what we call PUPs, potentially unwanted programs, that they will take anything to get rid of that experience.
That makes sense.
And I'm connected to some folks' computers remotely that just you can't browse because of the number of ads that are overlaid on a page. So I think that was a missed opportunity, really, and it just for whatever reason never kind of grabbed everybody. But I thought that would have been perfect for the enterprise, that type of functionality and control.
Yeah.
But I think it's dead. I honestly do. I think we're going to get a superficial update to RT. I think, the interface update, some new looking stuff, but I don't think we're going to get a heavy duty update that we're going to see with the other platforms. So it's unfortunate.
Well, this is the part of the show where we're going to transition on to the interview question that we normally do at the first part, but you know how crazy this week was. So first of all, thank you for your service to the country. You were in the Navy. We appreciate that, both from Kevin and I and our loyal listeners. So what are the benefits of waiting for an upgrade, waiting an upgrade cycle to get hardware for your computing needs?
Yeah, you caught that from the post I did over at SuperSite this week talking about my tech. And my habit over the years, I've been building my own computers for about 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, but I always on a budget. So if you buy the latest and greatest stuff, you've got an element of it that's kind of it's bleeding edge, which is fine, but it's also bleeding edge cost-wise. So it's kind of like buying run shoes. Buy last year's model. They cost half the price, but they're still a good model. So I do the same thing with my hardware. Is that, in fact, sitting behind me on the desk here today, I've been inserting new hardware into my desktop, new motherboard, processor, and memory. And I bought the processor I got came out about 9 months ago. The motherboard around the same time, and it cost me significantly less than it would have any other time if I'd bought it right when it came out. But the hardware, I've got a few more upgrade cycles. I'm putting 8 gig of RAM in it now, but I've got room for 32. The processor is a 6-core AMD FX 6350, but it can take an 8000 series, which is an 8-core processor. So I always try to buy gear so that I have a couple easy upgrade cycles. I'm already running SSDs in there. So, those little steps are small. They allow you to have a little bit of a bump, a year or two into your process, and then you go full board and you go again. So I like saving money. So that's the main reason. Somebody asked me why AMD. It's the same kind of concept. I probably bought AMD because it was inexpensive back in the days when I started building them. But they continue to be, and their performance meets my needs. And I honestly just couldn't see spending I spent $300 for all the stuff I just bought. That was what an i5 Intel, I think 4th generation processor would have cost me. So I got all my upgrade gear for the same price I could have just got a processor. So it works.
Nice. Well, that's smart.
All right. So, Richard, what are your expectations? There's been, like we've already discussed so far this hour, what are your expectations for Windows products for, the coming year?
Back December, Pete Pascal from Mashable called me and interviewed me for a story he did about Microsoft's 2015. And one of the points I made was Windows 8, Tech Press overwhelmingly called it a flop. Even when 8.1 was released, made some changes that kind of changed the way you interact with it. And again, I go back to my experience at Best Buy. When somebody would walk in, the question is usually, I got to buy a new computer, do you still have Windows 7? And, we weren't carrying Windows 7, but they said, well, I heard about that Windows 8. I hate that. I said, you heard about it? What did you hear? And then in 3 minutes of showing them a simple kind of demo on the start screen and how customizable it is and how they could deepen out of apps there and put their favorite team, people changed very quickly. Unfortunately, I think we were way down the road already after Windows 8, so there's no recovery there. So Windows 8, I think, is going to be the successful failure. I think it's a great system, and all it takes is a little bit of education on using it. 8.1 did well. And my comment to Pete Pascal was they got to knock 10 out of the park. And we're getting indications that they are. What they showed us on Wednesday, what we're all going to get to mess with this weekend with the new Insider build, we're starting to see change and the adaptation that the way they're adapting it to fit to be a better use scenario. Don't get me wrong, Microsoft is focused on consumer stuff, but enterprise is their bread and butter, and they got to get these enterprises upgrading off Windows 7. So in order to continue, their own revenue stream, because ultimately they're a business. It's the same reason why they've been putting their services on other platforms, and it's why the other platforms get the apps first, because they're the bigger markets, and we're the number 3. So on the Windows Phone side. So now, although you said the quote earlier, JJ, the comment was, "We want your experience on Microsoft devices and for Microsoft services to be the best." I hope they stand behind that, and we see that in the pudding. You know, the proof in the pudding will be is that we get the first-party apps first with the cool stuff, and then the other platforms, because that's what kills everybody right now, is seeing everybody else get that stuff first. So they got to knock it out of the park. I think they're well on their way. You know, I would say they easily hit a strong double at this point. We've still got a lot of time left in the development of Windows 10. Much could change. I think I tweeted out, you know, people were freaking out over the pictures that they saw on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And I just remind people, everything is subject to change.
Yeah.
So this is not fun. We are involved in a very public development of Windows that we have never been involved in before.
It's like voting.
Like I said, I was on the Vista. Sorry?
No, it's like voting, right? It's like if you don't like something, become an insider and tell them what you do or you don't like.
Get involved. And, you know, with Vista, it was very private. You couldn't talk about it outside of the test. A public preview, you know, telemetry. It started to take away the personalized experience. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, there are insiders out there who very much want their own thing changed about the OS that they're not happy with. And Microsoft is getting what they say, 800,000 pieces of feedback from the insiders so far. So they gotta, you know, it's all about payback, payoff. You know, what's going to work the best and those kind of things. And I don't doubt that Microsoft knows how to handle big data, and they don't know how to handle the feedback they're getting. And so we're seeing those. Are you going to please everybody? No way. It's not possible. So again, I think they're doing very well, but we're kind of in the middle of the game. You know, we haven't even quite gotten to the 7th inning stretch. But I think if they come to this, and they made a smart move letting people know that it was going to be a free upgrade from 7 and 8.1, because now they just wiped off the table the whole concern everybody was talking about back to school. You know, because anything that runs 7, people can purchase it, and they're going to guarantee to get that Windows 10 update at no cost whenever it comes out. That was a smart move on their part, too.
All right. Well, we're coming up on our 1 hour. I know we had a few more questions, but maybe, Richard, we can get you back on at a future time, maybe in another month or two, to hop back on and get to know you a little bit better. But,
sounds good.
Yeah, I definitely want to thank. I definitely want to thank everybody for joining us in the chat room today. We actually had some pretty high numbers visiting us here in the chat room today, and a lot of people.
That's because Richard. You know, Richard is the man. He brings along a posse.
That's right. Richard, tell people where they can find out more about you and where they can follow you at.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at WinOBS. If you're on Xbox Live, that's my same hand gamer tag there. Of course, I'm on the web, windowsobserver.com, and then now on the winsupersite.com over at Site for Windows.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes. So, everybody, thank you so much. For people that are first-time listeners to the Tech Informist, follow us on Twitter at Tech Informist. Visit us on Facebook, Google+, Instagram. Make sure to visit thetechinformist.com, and as always, I mentioned earlier in the show, you can watch live. We try to shoot this 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We try to strive for around 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, but you know, sometimes we work with our guest schedules to make sure we can accommodate what they've got going on in their busy lives. So make sure to check out thetechinformist.com/live to keep up to date with our schedule, and also participate in the chat room that I just finished mentioning. So, everybody, thank you, JJ, Richard. Just thank you so much.
You bet.
Great. Congratulations, Microsoft, for a big week. And everybody from the Tech Informist, consider yourself informed. We are out.